again, and welcome to Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy. I'm your host, certified sex therapist Laurie Watson, author of Wanting Sex Again, and blogger at Psychology Today and WebMD. And I have with me Dr. Adam Mathews, my co-host, who's a couples therapist, psychotherapist, and president of NCAMFT. Foreplay is dedicated to helping couples keep it hot. Each episode, we cover an aspect of sex that impacts your sex life and something that you can relate to. So if you find our discussions helpful, please give us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. We would love it if you would tell a friend about us. You can find us also on the web at foreplayrst.com. And if you have a comment or a topic that you'd like us to talk about, we'd love to hear from you. Please send them to us at info@foreplayrst.com. Thanks for listening. Now on to today's topic. Hey, Adam.
Hey, Laurie. Welcome back. How was your weekend this weekend?
It was great. I'm studying these days for my PhD, and so that takes up a lot of time.
I know those days well.
I know it. But I get to see my kids, and we went out to coffee, and we moved a boy into an apartment, and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's good family times.
Good family times.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we went for our first family bike ride.
Oh,
this weekend.
How fun is that?
No, it was not. It was awful.
Oh,
it was
really?
terrible. It was. I don't even know why. Why we did that.
Everybody was crying.
Oh, everybody broke. We didn't even make it out the neighborhood, Laurie. This is. I mean, for those of you that have kids, you'll understand this. My kids we just finally got them to where they're riding bikes.
Yeah.
Probably should have done it sooner. Would have been helpful, but the hills. We have a little small hill. It's teeny tiny. But you would have thought it was Everest to get out, and it was hot. This North Carolina heat is about to kill us.
Yeah.
And when I have two mini teenagers for daughters, I don't know what I'm going to do in the teenage years, but they broke down totally. So
I remember those years.
We gave it the old college try, and the college try failed us.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But it is what it is.
Well, but we're going to talk today about some things that are important that make grown-ups cry.
That makes grown-ups cry over bad sex.
Right. We're going to talk about 10 mistakes couples make about sex.
Yeah, and I think the first one that we have is really right at the top of my list as something that happens. I think it's probably at the top of yours as well, is thinking that good sex will come naturally. I think everybody falls into this trap, right? They're thinking that because desire is high, because sex is glamorized so much, because it seems, I think all media says that it's so easy that it's neat and tidy and everything works right the first time, and if you love each other so much that sex will be so natural, right? But that seems to be a lie, in my opinion. I think
it's a huge lie. I think sex requires so much work. It's such an important part of our lives. Mm-hmm. I mean, some of my research these days, is talking about how if our sex life is diminished, how it impacts our quality of life, basically. Our quality of life goes way down if our sex life isn't good, but we think somehow or another it should be magical.
Yeah.
We should have good sex just because we love each other, because we're creatures, because of, I don't know. But given that it's so important, I think the issue with it coming naturally means that we shouldn't have to put any effort into it.
Yeah. Or we shouldn't have to, figure things are not going to have to figure things out, which positions work best for us, what our partner likes, what we like, figuring out what we ourselves like is a huge deal as well, right? We just think all of those things should just naturally
and communicating
click
that
into place.
I mean, lowering our inhibitions enough to ask, or even our psychological issues about needing. Sex makes us. Because we are creatures as well as, souls, I guess, we have this need for somebody to make our body feel good, and that's so vulnerable. Yeah. And then just thinking, gosh, that it should just happen without any talking about it, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And people are so disappointed that it doesn't happen naturally.
So they think something's flawed or broken if it doesn't.
Or that they don't love each other.
Yeah.
It's clearly a problem, because it doesn't happen naturally. So that must mean we're not suited to each other. We're not the right person.
I have heard this so often in the last few weeks from couples that they attribute difficult places in their relationship to the fact that they don't love each other enough. The phrase, if he loved me or if she loved me.
Oh, sure.
Like comes up so much, then the implication is they would do this. So then this holds true about sex as well. Like if she loved me enough, she would just know somehow by osmosis exactly the way
what I like.
Yeah, we just automatically attribute to each other that we're all like have some kind of magical ESP. Like we can just read each other's minds and hearts and know exactly what
how
is
to
happening
touch and how to do it. And you're right. This idea, I think, of that it should be natural is really tied to love somehow. That in love we should be so attuned to each other that we barely need communication or instruction or anything.
Yeah. Well, it's so tied to feelings. I think just how we feel things should go. Logically, it makes. I think if you break it down, it makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
Right. But feeling-wise, it feels like everything should just flow
smooth,
and click and
smooth.
Yeah.
And it isn't. No, again, the counterpoint to this is what we believe. Sex takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do here at Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy is we're trying to educate people about all the different issues topically that come up for them sexually and to help them through it. And this one, if you're thinking it should come naturally, just throw that away. It actually, sex takes probably, more work than almost any area of your life.
Yeah. And it makes it so
maybe
that
not every area. Communication, that's a little tough too.
That's tough too. Yeah, but it
raising kids.
But it does if you're able to begin to see it as something that takes a lot of effort and requires that from you, then when problems come up, you don't see them as problems. You see them as things that you're going to have to learn about.
Exactly.
And it makes them much more manageable.
It's like saying staying fit should come naturally.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
staying in
if
shape.
Only.
I should just automatically have a six-pack abs.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Instead of the one-pack.
That's right.
That should just happen naturally.
Okay.
I think number 2 flows right along with that because if we think sex should come naturally, then when bad sex happens, we begin to think that it's irreparable.
Right. I mean, this is like the other side of the coin, right? Bad sex means we don't love each other, and there's nothing we can do about it.
That's right. It's immovable. We're stuck in that bad sex place.
I would say, maybe because my husband and I were so inexperienced, this is the one area I have the most hope for, is that bad sex is something that can be improved, and you don't have to start off hot in order to have hot sex later on, as you work at it. But I think people, they come into all kinds of problems. I mean, not only do you maybe start off great and then you run into some problems and then they think, oh, well, that means something that, we don't love each other or that we're never going to get through this or we're incompatible. But actually, I mean, most everything sexually can be repaired and improved, and you can move through it to have good, connected, hot sex.
Yeah, and I think especially if you take number 1, if you think of sex as effort and something that is going to require some intentionality from you, like then it should get better. It should get better over time. So it should hit rough patches and like that you see it as a natural evolution in your relationship. That it can get better. Right, because it requires
with
effort.
Intention.
Yeah.
Adam's favorite word.
Because it's
with
not
intention.
With intention, man. Everything with intention. So much better if it's intentional.
Yeah.
But it's if it is not something that just naturally happens, then when there's bad sex, the logical thing is that it can get better.
Right, and we offer lots and lots of repairs here. I mean, I think the major thing that needs repair in sex is the developmental stages bring their challenges sexually. So really when you're first married, one of the developmental stages is to turn attention from toward each other out to the world. Okay, we've found each other. Now what are we going to accomplish? Are we going to have a family, build careers? And that turning is a natural development in terms of a couple stage, but it moves from you and I are the most central issue to what we're doing in the world is the most central issue. And people do lose something sexually in that, just to go to work every day. I mean, especially I think about the kids in college, right? They have every single day if they want to be together and to have hot sex, and then suddenly they're going to work and they're tired, and Maybe they're starting to have a baby or two. And
Yeah.
it's a difficult stage.
Yeah. So figuring that out.
Yeah.
But there is solutions to that.
Right. There's lots of solutions. So there's developmental problems, and then there's technical sexual problems that also most of them are repairable.
Yeah. I mean, would you agree with the statement that there's very few issues around sex that cannot be resolved
Absolutely.
with work? Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to
Absolutely.
be difficult to resolve. There may be it may be really hard to get through those, but they are resolvable.
Yeah.
There's very few that are not.
Very few.
So and number 3 that we have down here is mistakes couples make about sex is a lack of knowledge. This one, my goodness, there's so many things out there that people believe about themselves, about their partner, about how sex is supposed to work. That's just not true, right?
Yeah. And my favorite one, and I know this is a bit pejorative, but my favorite one is the man who comes in and says, I've been with 30 women and none of them needed clitoral stimulation. I'm like, buddy, there is just no way that is true. There is no way that is true. And it just shows kind of how many people fake it.
Yeah.
To please a partner, who's maybe more of a hookup or something. I guess they just want to get it over with,
I mean, I think this lack of knowledge falls into a couple different categories, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a lack of knowledge about how your own body works. You have a lack of knowledge about how your partner's body works. And then you have a lack of knowledge about how you work
Sex
together.
works, right. Exactly.
It falls into those 3 categories.
And any combination of 2 people is unique. So I like the third one that you just said. Maybe you did have a ton of experience, but that doesn't mean this partner.
Yeah, it doesn't automatically translate exactly well.
I mean, because people like so many things that are so different. But it might be good to have a basis, of knowledge.
Right.
Like how does a woman reach orgasm? How do you give a man oral sex? That's probably the secondary thing that I hear women say is they don't perform oral sex because they don't know how to do it, or they don't think they're good at it, which, gentlemen, I would be very enthusiastic if I were you, but
Yes.
But lack of knowledge is a killer in terms of really making sex imaginative and creative.
Yeah. And really, it's 2017. There is no lack of resources out there. I mean, obviously, we are one and have lots of podcasts about education in that way. But there's just tons of resources but I think a lot of people are afraid to say to one, admit that they have a lack of knowledge.
Sure.
And 2, they're embarrassed to go and seek out answers to do that. But that it's readily available. It's right there.
And I would say a couple of my favorites are Michael Castleman's book, Great Sex. That's a great book for a man to read. I mean, really, Michael is a friend of mine, and he's a powerful writer, and he especially writes with women in mind. Yeah. I mean, so definitely check that out. My book, Wanting Sex Again, it goes through all the developmental stages, talks about how women have orgasms too. I think that there's this resource. It's a film resource. It's called Oh My God Yes, OMGYES.com. And it's a very explicit film, but it talks about how to touch a woman and how to bring her to orgasm. And it shows the woman touching herself with particular techniques. And I think what's really great about this film is it gives labels, for particular techniques. So it's explicit. That means, they're showing everything. But I think it's beautifully done. It's artfully done. It's tactfully done. And it's, probably one of the most vulnerable things I've ever seen done. So you could check that out.
Can we just agree, though, that people should not rely on their friends for their information about sex
or porn?
Like, don't get your knowledge about sex just only from those 2 places. Right. Like, seek out experts, seek out educational material, and people exaggerate. Porn exaggerates. Friends exaggerate.
Yeah, if your buddy's saying, wow, we do it, 6 times every weekend, it's like, oh, come on, go check his yard out. Yeah. If his yard is mowed, that was only 5 times that weekend.
All right, so we're going to come back and talk about our last 2 in the second half of the show, but talking about 10 mistakes that couples make in bed. We're only through 3 of them, and already that's a lot of good information.
Okay.
That's a lot of mistakes.
Okay, right back.
Wanting Sex Again: How to Rediscover Desire and Heal a Sexless Marriage by certified sex therapist Laurie Watson.
Each chapter is designed to fix one of the problems that cause low libido, from early marriage through the childbearing years, even all the way through menopause. I've also had men read it and tell me that for them it was the most hopeful thing they read about resolving sexual problems.
Look for Wanting Sex Again on Amazon.com. You can also talk to Laurie Watson for therapy in person or via Skype.
I offer couples counseling and sex therapy, and I think about both aspects of the relationship, emotional intimacy and sexual technique, and that combination together helps marriages be happy.
Improve your sex and improve your relationship with Awakening Center for Couples and Intimacy. Find out more at awakenloveandsex.com. Awaken what's possible.
It is one of my great joys in life to be able to really help individuals and couples find strength in their relationships and really find hope again.
Licensed marriage and family therapist Dr. Adam Mathews from Mathews Counseling.
I work with a wide variety of issues, including depression and anxiety, marital issues, issues with adolescence. I believe that therapy should be designed around you, that it should be personalized to who you are and to your unique situation.
Therapy is available in office, online, and by phone.
I want therapy to be comfortable for everyone. At our office, you'll find that we sit around a fireplace in deep, comfortable chairs, look at the problem differently, and offer practical solutions for you to take home and utilize outside of the therapy room.
Schedule today and rediscover hope.
You can find me on the web at mathewscounseling.net, Mathews with one T. You can contact us through email or phone and find a lot of resources on our website, mathewscounseling.net.
Okay, we're back with Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy, and we're talking about 10 mistakes couples make about sex.
We have already gotten through some doozies. We've already talked about thinking good sex will come naturally, thinking bad sex is irreparable, and number 3, just a lack of knowledge. And this fourth one, we touched on in the beginning just where the developmental stages of relationships and how those bring about problems. And a lack of priority is our fourth mistake and we think couples make about sex. And that seems to me, you tell me if this is wrong, comes really in kind of the middle stage of relationships.
Yeah, I
right?
agree.
You talked about in the first half about couples where initially they're turned inward toward each other, and then they turn outward to start conquering the world, and
Yes.
this is where sex starts to take a dive in priority, right?
And I think that, probably more often than not, it's the woman who lacks the priority over sex because hormonally she's not as pushed. Males are pushed, but no matter what, they're usually they're pushed by their bodies to prioritize sex because they have so much testosterone in them. And women are also, without testosterone, I would say they don't have as much energy. I mean, that's just physiological.
Right.
So they're more tired at the end of the day, or at the end of the day, being touched out by children or worn out by work. They don't have it in them, literally, physically, to say, okay, sex is still top of my list.
Right. And I think men, though, they still think sex is a priority in their minds, but in their actions, I don't know that they're doing the same things that they did in the beginning of the relationship to help with those issues for their partners.
Right.
I think men start to put a lot more effort into work and a lot less effort into the relationship. I have a lot of men trying to maintain activities and hobbies the same way that they did when they either didn't have kids or didn't have a full-time and demanding job.
Are they playing games?
The video games, man.
My kids play so many dang games. Hours and hours.
Wow.
I hope they will never listen to my podcast so I can talk about them all I want. I hope they will never listen to my podcast.
Your kids don't want to listen to their mom talk about sex? What?
Thank God. Yeah, but
Shocking.
they spend hours on that, and you're like, okay, how are you going to have time to romance your partner or, It's tons. Yeah. You're right. So I think women need to prioritize in their minds, and men need to prioritize in their actions.
Sure. Yeah.
A connection, right, that would be inducive to a sexual connection.
Yeah. I think if men approached sex in the beginning of the relationship the same way they approach it in the middle of the relationship, it wouldn't be.
There wouldn't be as many problems.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think what they do is if they approached it with the same cavalier nature in the beginning, just saying we should like, basically I'm here, let's go type of attitude, right? I mean, I think they would have far less sex, and so
y'all need to just see Adam's face when he said that. It was so funny. It was so funny.
Well, but that's what they do in the middle. That's essentially what men do in the middle parts of their relationship. Is they show up and they expect sex.
I know.
And that's not what they did in the beginning.
Okay, I had a girlfriend who, she married this guy because he was so good, right? This is why she married him. And I came over a couple years into the marriage and her lingerie was stuffed in the drawer. I'm like, what happened? And she's like, well, it's kind of like sex is like this shout out from the shower. It's like, hey, you want to do it? I'm like, oh, that is so disappointing.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think it's just, I think
every morning he wanted it in the shower, which I get, but really, not so good for a woman in the shower usually.
Yeah.
And 2 minutes in the shower, not enough time.
Well, and I think when we talk about priority, like we are essentially, priorities are dictated by two things: time and money, right? So it's where you're taking time and where you're spending your money. So if you're not having that time together, which we talk about all the time, but even time for sex and saying this is when we are going to take time for sex to make sex important, spending money on time away, like just on a weekend retreat, a vacation together, just the two of you. If your money's not going to those type of things, to date nights, to just all those things that matter, that say this is a priority, then sex is not a priority. You can't tell me that it is if your time and your money are not going toward making that happen.
That's right. Put your money where your mouth is.
That's right. That's right.
No, I agree. It has to be prioritized. And I think that, one of the biggest flaws I see is that children are the priority. Mm-hmm. In most families, they are the one who get the time and the money. Mm. And it's such a wrong priority because the children don't provide stability. Yeah. The parents provide stability for the children, and your love life is like undergirding all of that connection between the two of you. And without sex, without sex being good, it's going to fall apart and the children will suffer.
Yeah. Yeah, so taking care
of... If the bow breaks, the cradle will fall. If the bow breaks, the cradle will fall. That's
right. The bow here is good sex.
The bow is the branches of the tree, right? And we're the tree. Right. We're the tree. The marriage is the tree.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I think that's the best thing you can do for your kids is make your relationship strong. And that's one of the ways is making time for that sexual connection. And plus, your kids are going to be gone. They are going to leave you. They're going to be out of your house. And so, like, if you don't put the time and effort in now, they're going to leave, and you're going to look across the table, and there's going to be a complete stranger sitting there who you haven't had sex with in years. Yeah,
and let me tell you, even when it's not a complete stranger looking across the table at you, when your kids leave, it's a whole new developmental stage. Yeah. You have to redefine that. And, there's kind of this fantasy of like, great, we get to run around naked, which is true. But on the other hand, it's like, you have to renegotiate this whole thing. And if you've only put energy into the children, it's like, well, what about us? Who are we? Who are we to each other? It's so important.
Absolutely. So lack of priority, so shifting that priority to sex. Number 5, lack of planning.
Yeah.
Right? This is one that I don't know that even occurs to most couples. And if it does, it's really off-putting to think about planning sex.
I know.
Right? And or to put any kind of plan into it. How do we even begin to approach that when it feels so off-putting for sex in your relationship?
Well, I think people think of this as scheduled sex. And they're like, okay, if you have to schedule the sex, there's no spontaneity, there's no natural drive. It just sounds boring. I think that the planning should be in 2 parts. That the high desire person has to clear the way, so they have to plan dates and time alone together. And the low desire person has to plan for sex. So don't tell your partner, Thursday night, sex night. But in your own heart, Thursday night is sex night, or, pick a day of the week that you're going to initiate, that you're going to set things aside, that you're going to make the conditions right for yourself. I mean, to me, the low desire person is the person who needs to plan for sex, whether it be, okay, I need to read a sexy novel, I need to get in the bath, I need to get the kids a babysitter and get out of, so I can go to my class or whatever, and I can have time alone. We talk a lot about how low desire people, sometimes psychologically, they can't share their bodies because they haven't had enough time for themselves. So get yourself time for yourself so that you're more willing to share your body. But that takes planning.
So the planning really, from what I hear you saying, Laurie, is really more about preparing yourself to be sexual and to be engaged in the sexual relationship.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily around, planning a specific night or...
Well, I mean, I think the low desire person should pick a night.
Yeah.
Or pick a day, to be available and to start things. I mean, they really need to, because they need a lot of things to go right for themselves in order to feel in the mood. So make those things go right.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
Yeah. I think that just getting the one I keep coming back to in this that we've talked about is when you don't think of good sex as just occurring naturally, if we can, you can move away from that.
That fantasy, which is a myth, right?
I think then planning becomes much more palpable. Like if you move away from that, planning doesn't have to be a turnoff, as much of a turnoff as it may sound.
Well, I mean, when we're first together, we plan. I mean, we make all kinds of plans.
Yeah.
We make all kinds of adjustments to our schedule. I remember when I was dating my husband, I mean, literally, I don't know if I slept 8 hours for months.
Yeah.
I mean, we would it would be the end of the day and we weren't even planning to get together, and we would call each other up. It's like, hey, you want to come over for a quick glass of wine? Or, I mean, and then we'd end up together for hours, without, and then maybe you wake up in the dawn and it's like, oh, I got 3 hours and I got to go to work. It's like, I mean, that was...
It's the consideration for the other. Your mind is always oriented to the other person and how you're going to organize your day, your week around
the most
that
exciting
other
thing
person.
was to be with the other person. Yeah. So you planned everything around that.
Yeah.
And you shifted sleep, you shifted work, you shifted other activities, you shifted friends. I mean, everything got shifted and planned for so that you could be together. That is actually a form of planning.
Yeah. And so it's a natural part. It's a natural part of any relationship.
Right.
So in quick review of the 5 that we've covered in part A of the 10 mistakes couples make about sex. 1, thinking good sex will come naturally. All right.
Right.
Number 2, thinking bad sex is irreparable. 3, a lack of knowledge. 4, a lack of priority. And 5, a lack of planning. All right.
That's it. So you've been listening to Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy with your sex therapist, Laurie Watson, and couples therapist, Dr. Adam Mathews. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with Part B on 10 mistakes couples make about sex. Hey, help us stay on top here at Foreplay. We'd love it if you would subscribe and share it with your friends. And please take 1 sec and rate and review us. Thanks so much.